Ever play in a band before? Ever play in
You recently traveled to Australia, much with the same mindset. I don't think you had any hotels booked or anything. You just traveled there, said like, fuck it, this is going to work out somehow.
Yeah.
And is that maybe a project that we could talk about here, or is that something you want to kind of keep under wraps at this point still?
No, we could talk about the idea of it. In fact, I realized after some years of work that I've dived into that European business so deeply that it wasn't possible for me to do whatever I want, because people were expecting things. And that's all. On one hand, it's a big compliment, because it just shows that what I've done made something happen and people recognized it. So I'm thankful for this.
And when you say they expect certain things, what kind of things are we talking about here?
It might be, for example, I've been successful with an act in a specific genre, so people think I'm a specialist for that kind of genre. Or
Okay.
people know that I wrote quite a lot of lyrics in another kind of genre, so people think I'm a specialist for lyrics with these kinds of artists. But the truth, and like I said, on one hand it's a compliment. On the other hand, it just means that people call me with the idea of, this is what I can do, and I can do it with success. And that's, for me, a kind of pressure, or I don't want to see myself. I don't understand what I do like this. For me, it's a creative process, beginning from zero again and again and again. And this is the truth I believe in. It doesn't matter what I've done before. I always start from scratch. I know a lot over the years, but that doesn't mean that it helps. Hopefully it does. Maybe what I can say is I'm able to do quality work, but maybe quality isn't what is needed. It's the moment that is needed. And when people call with that idea, like I've said, I'm thankful because it's a compliment, but on the other hand, it means that I'm not able to do whatever could be done.
Mm.
I have to do something out of that world. And that limits so much what could happen emotionally too, that I just can't stand it for too long time. It has to be limited.
So we were talking about your project in Australia, so just to kind of direct the conversation back to that. And what was your mindset going there? Why did you want to try something like that out, where you were really going in cold, trying out a new project there?
Well, the idea originally was there was a key moment. I worked in LA, and 2 weeks later I traveled to Milan. And sat in the hallway of the studio in Milan, and I heard exactly the same sounds as I've heard in LA. The tuned 808s, the trap hi-hats, it was just exactly the same sound.
Splice.
It was splice, and a kind of an attitude that's a world language right now. And on one hand, it's great that music could be a general language. I'm not talking bad about it, but I was disappointed that I didn't hear anything that was in some way born out of the roots of the Italian pop music history. And the Italian pop music history is just great. I love it. It's so special. It has that these very complex written songs sounding so easy and light, and the Dolce Vita moment in it, creating very hard to write compositions with great lyrical ideas. I just love it. I'm not good in understanding Italian, but in fact, there are several tracks like an artist like Lucio Dalla or something like this. I just love it. So I was disappointed, and I said, couldn't we do something that shows me that I'm in Italy right now? And then they looked at me, and they didn't understand in the first moment. And then one of them laughed, and he just played some chords. And he said, do you mean something like this? And I said, yes. And then we had a great session the rest of the day. And then I traveled home and was back home thinking about that. And I just asked myself, what about me? Am I assimilating to the market I'm in when I work there? Or do I bring something original from my place? And the answer was that I did what was needed. For sure, with my own view on it, coming from Germany, born in Cologne, there must be something, but I didn't bring that. That wasn't the idea. The idea was helping the people out with what they do. So I made that decision with a good friend of mine that we want to try to create something that has a home. And this should be something that we could look at and say, well, we live in Berlin. We are born in Germany. This is something we grew up with, and that's something that we bring with our DNA. And that was really, really interesting because, I mean, identity is a hard answer to give. What is identity? It's so subjective. And this is what I say today too. It's a very subjective look on it now. I'm not saying that we found the truth about the history of German electronic music and this is what we do now. It's just our very personal idea of it. And to test an idea like this, to test, is your identity really something that the people accept as an identity or something different? We thought it's important to test it right away. And to share it right away, because identity doesn't come from locking yourself in and not communicating to anyone. It has to be shared. Then you know if it's an identity or not. So I booked very spontaneous that flight to Australia. We had some playbacks done and enjoyed it a lot. Being in the studio, playing around with all these old synthesizers. Having that krautrock history like Cologne, Düsseldorf, Kraftwerk, acts like this, Can, being in all that krautrock worldy stuff. And we had these playbacks and I heard them and decided right away, okay, let's go somewhere. And the reason to go to Australia and New Zealand was I just didn't want to go to the US or Britain. Not because I don't like it, because the identity of what they do is so strong that the chance is very high that when you combine it in the first moment, it might lose that specific idea. Because they are so trained, especially the people who are a bit more professional, they are so trained in all these things we're talking about right now, that I thought I want to share it with another view on the world. And so the idea was, what could it be? Let's find a place that might be interesting, and we've chosen Australia without any more bigger reasons than this.
I've gotten the chance to listen to some of the stuff. I did a little bit of musical profiling on it, and I really love what you're doing here. I'm a big fan of Can myself, and Iggy Bamyazi was a big inspiration for my own work as well. And I always thought, if you haven't listened to Iggy Bamyazi, check it out on YouTube. It's absolutely insane. It's a record from '72, I think, and it sounds like Massive Attack like 20 years later. It's absolutely crazy. And it's exactly my cup of tea, and I think a lot of the plays that are on that private SoundCloud page are probably for me. So I'm already a big fan. I'm really looking forward to hearing more from you guys. Can we name the title of the band, or is that something you want to keep up first?
No, it's Verboten Berlin.
Verboten Berlin, exactly. Okay, cool. So one of the things I wanted to ask is, so you were looking for Verboten Berlin. You had this really clear EPK, very clear. The photographs all pointed towards the same direction. I think the image was very clear cut. But then you decide to bring in American singers, like or not American, but English speaking native speakers. What brought you to that decision? Why didn't you decide? I mean, Ken obviously had English lyrics as well, but what made you decide not to go for some German vocalists, for example? Was that part of a decision, or was that just trying stuff out?
Well, in fact, just saying it right away, we plan to bring it together with other languages too. It's not about English. It could be also Russian or Polish or whatever. If it just has the right emotion. On the other hand, English as the reason why we went to Australia getting some English lyrics on it was because we had the feeling that in Australia there is an understanding for that Berlinish sound. Like good friends of us like Bukashade or for example an artist like Claptone, they are pretty big there, playing that pretty German sound. I hope they don't kill me if I say that. But people recognize it and they know they're from Berlin. People like it for that, and it's interesting I wanted to know why. I wanted to understand why is Berlin a place they recognize and love over there, and I just wanted to have that kind of emotion. And in fact, it turned out to be true. There is a connection between the people in Melbourne and Berlin, for example. They know a lot about the music scene here. I was extremely surprised. And for example, on the first Verboten Berlin single now, it's an artist called Running Touch. And he's a specialist on the Berlin and German club scene, and he has a very, very, very he has his own view on it because it's so far away, and I wanted just to share that emotion. I wanted to feel it with him, and it worked out. And thank you, Matt. Good.